Uh, all right, everybody. So I'm excited for this one. I found this gentleman on Instagram and instantly was like in love with the content. And he has, I guess, a fun personality that you're not bored when you're watching his videos and kind of getting the educational content. It's Eric from Everything Lead on Instagram, detectlead.com.
Yes, sir. That's the website to get
All
the
right.
test kit that I use. And that's really my claim to fame is the test kit, you know. Lead on
Excellent.
itself is really hard to make fun because it's such a terrible topic, but it is important.
Okay. Well, I don't know a ton about you. I just started following you maybe a few months ago, and then I reached out to him and said, I would love to do a podcast with you. And he's like, yeah, I'm down. And I was like, okay. Wasn't expecting that, but awesome. So yeah, I guess where are you located? How'd you get started? What's the journey?
Sure. I'm in New York. I live on Long Island and I've lived here my whole life. And I didn't after college I had no idea what I was going to do. I think that's kind of common. And I had a little bit of a rough time during college. I was like had some substance abuse issues and stuff like that. And I just was like trying to think what's next, you know? So I wound up meeting somebody on vacation and he was telling me about Amazon FBA. And he told me what he was doing. I said, that seems like easy enough. Let me look into how I can actually make the stuff that I'm going to sell. And so I rifled through my mind and I looked up all the niche keywords that I could think of. And one thing that I decided was in demand and was being underserved was something called a reagent test kit. And the reagents that I was selling initially were for drugs. They were for indoles or amines, which are two like basic classes of chemicals, Ehrlich's reagent, Marquis reagent. And so I started making these, and I made them in a way that extended the shelf life and gave the user way more value than the other ones were on the market. And so I sold those for like 4 or 5 months, and then Amazon said these are not, you can't even sell these. This is not even legal to sell. And so I said, all right, whatever. So for the next like couple months, I figured I got to figure out something else because this was like, wound up being a good business right off the bat. And then so I just looked up all the reagents that existed. And a reagent is just a chemical that you use to react with other chemicals. And oftentimes you can get a presumption of what you have in front of you based on the color change that happens. And so I found this other reagent called sodium rhodizonate, and it was being used in a product called Lead Check, and that was being sold by 3M. So I looked at this product, 3M Lead Check. It was $5 for one individual test, completely overpriced. And like it was just insane. Like someone's gonna buy 10 of these for 50 bucks. Like that's a lot of money for only 10 times you can test something. That's just so ridiculous. So I decided I could probably make this way cheaper for people. And this is in 2019. So I figured out a way because the sodium rhodizonate it breaks down in water. So I mixed it with dry rubbing alcohol, blended it up, and then I was dipping swabs in there and then letting them dry. Then you dip that swab in household vinegar, which everybody has, so I don't have to ship a liquid. And then next thing you know, I had a good product on Amazon that I sold for like 5 years. And then I eventually found out about the glowing test through a research contact I had at Columbia University. And then I said, this is a total game changer. Now you can just spray the spray. You don't have to worry about activating it with a liquid that you have. It glows. It's so much more exciting and it's so much more sensitive. And you can even see dust, which is like, we'll get into that, I'm sure, in a minute. But that's like the real risk is like dust. It's not paint on your wall.
Mhm.
So I just, I went full into it. Like I said in the past, I get full into things, right? So I went totally into this lead thing. I got a ton of lead detection equipment. I spent like $250,000 in all trying to get the
Wow.
best equipment to detect lead, figure out exactly how I could build out these products the best, and trying to team up with like lead poison prevention advocates who I learned are typically in it because of a really scary and traumatic event. And then I became like obsessed with having people avoid having this happen to them because it's so disruptive and it's so scary that it takes people on a totally new path and it's not fun. So I figured anybody I can help with this, it's like an easy win. Like it's an easy win for humanity to avoid lead poisoning because it sucks. It causes so many problems.
Yeah. So we're we kind of skirt the edge on a lot of topics. We don't like go out there and but like the conspiracy theorist in me is like, yeah, of course it's $50 for one test because we don't want you to look for it. like, it's like one of those patent protection things of like, oh, like, oh, we don't want you looking for this item, therefore we'll make it, $10,000 for you to find out.
Sure. I mean, it's a combination of things, and the conspiracy runs a little bit deeper than this random product because the product is expensive because it was patented in the 90s. And I don't even think the patent was that good. I don't think that it was actually inventive, but I think it did get passed, and then nobody actually tried them in court. So you'll never know because the patent expired in 2019. Like you'll never know if that was
Yeah.
actually legit and for all those years it was overpriced. But the sketchy thing is that the limit, so that's an EPA recognized test kit. And what
Okay.
EPA recognized means is it passed like a set of tests that they made up in 2010. And the set of tests that they made up in 2010 was it has to detect lead at the regulated limit, which is 5,000 ppm or 1 milligram of lead per square centimeter over 95% of the time. And then right after they recognized that test kit, which had just been bought the rights to, 3M just bought the rights in 2010, they changed the rules. So now they said that you have to test negative 90% of the time when it's below 1 milligram per square centimeter. And so like they changed the rules. So like if you use a test kit, the best test kit that's recognized by the EPA is going to be saying that there's no lead when there actually is quite a lot of lead, but it's technically not regulated. And that's a huge thing about lead is that the only protections people have are what the technical regulations are. And since there is so much lead and there's so much lead in government-owned properties, they're not lowering the limit because it would cost the government, I don't even
Yeah.
want to say the B word,
Yeah.
amount of money to renovate and fix these properties because people are living in unsafe conditions, but they're in
Mhm.
total denial that there's an unsafe condition if it's not a regulated amount. They actually lost a lawsuit about 2 years ago, and the lawsuit said that these limits aren't based on human health and you have to lower the limits. And they're like, there was about almost like 8 months ago, there was an EPA meeting and they talked about the limits, and the people there were so smug from the EPA. They were like, these limits are fine, but really like they're not fine. Like their dust limit's too high, their paint limit's too high. They're probably not going to lower it though. So and so I don't even believe in that EPA recognized thing because it's like my test can't be recognized because it's too sensitive, and that's absurd.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of my friends, David Avocado Wolf, he's been in the health realm for eons now, and one of the things he said early on, because you probably run into something like me where you get so passionate, you're like, why is it like this? Like, why can't we change it? It's like, no, look at Eric. Like, don't wait for the EPA to give you the check mark. It's like, get people right where they are, and let's not like fight the system, but let's just go around it and make an alternative system. And that's what I love about what you're doing. It's, hey, like, power's in your hands. Don't wait for someone to say that you have lead poisoning or lead's bad or whatever. It's like, how about we'll just, we don't need to change regulations, a limit, whatever. Just and that empowers people that, if a tidal wave of PR comes to that subject, it'll change on its own, just from like your little grassroots thing. Because like, we know what governments are like. We know they're all just people and they're fallible and they have bills to pay. So no one's gonna get up and move for your cause unless people are, rah behind. Like, if there's a mob behind it saying, hey, we don't care about the test, the limits, we want this out of here, we want to change. And that, yeah.
That's what it takes a lot of the time, and it's tough to even know if you have lead. Like, the symptoms aren't very obvious, and
Mhm.
adults are almost never tested, even though lead does cause 400,000 deaths per year from heart attacks.
Wow.
Relatively low levels of lead exposure will increase blood pressure and increase atherosclerosis, which we know, like, everybody knows about, like calcium binds to cholesterol and sticks to your arteries, but
Mhm.
lead acts like calcium. So you wind up with lead stuck to cholesterol, stuck to your arteries, which is inflammatory, and it's just not a good look. And that causes a lot of, like death per year. It's like 6 million globally and 400,000 a year in the US. It's
Yeah.
incredible. It's like an
So
insane thing.
my wife's background is more in the um because you say like primitive skills, ancestral skills, survival skills arena, but mine was more the health side of things. So I had childhood cancer when I was 2 and had a kidney removed after like treatment failed. So um, after my teens and drinking like an idiot and going in my 20s and just partying, like I kind of I was like, hey, like I want to be healthy. I want to. So I became like the wacky health nut, rah 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 for all that type of stuff. And yeah, something like lead. It's almost a lot of chemicals can get a blanket immunity because there's so much cross reaction and there's so many overlap of symptoms that the legal system or the law system, they'll always have something to fall back on, you know,
Mm, yeah.
because they could always say, oh, was it the lead? Or what? Oh, you work at a job in front of a computer, and we'll find this other thing that happens in your office that you're breathing in, and your AC system might be mold, and it's actually probably this. And they'll always have something to fall back on because you can never pinpoint, even if you found the source of lead. It's like the gentleman who won the Roundup case, like had to be dying of cancer, and he's on death's door, and they take this case for the Monsanto weed killer Roundup, and then it can kind of open the floodgates. But still, it's not like we're kind of still waiting for the pushback on that. But yeah, they're just, oh well, you sure it wasn't your drinking? You sure it wasn't this? You sure it wasn't? They'll always find something to shift the blame.
And especially with lead, there's so many potential sources. The argument against litigation is always you were poisoned some other way. There's another source of
Mhm.
lead that you're getting this from, and that's
It wasn't
always
your
the
work.
case.
It wasn't this product. Yeah,
Yeah. So, what I always like to do for people is tell them a little bit about where lead came from and then where it wound up.
yeah, I'd love
Uh,
that. Like a little history of.
yeah. So I mean, like ancestral people had 1,000 times less lead in their bones than modern people, and that's because lead is naturally underground. It's a heavy mineral, it's a heavy element, heavy metal, and it's bound normally to sulfur, and that's an insoluble form of
Mm,
lead. So it doesn't break down in the water. It's really stable. Lead sulfide, super stable. So when we started digging it up during the Bronze Age, we would smelt it, which involves heating it up. That releases a lot of lead into the atmosphere, and then you add some extra carbon. Normally, you just add some coal to it or whatever, and then you cut off some of the oxygen, and then that carbon reacts with the lead oxide, and then that turns it into lead metal, and then that melts
mhm,
down. You have metal lead, and so now you can do whatever you want with it. And they would take that metal lead, turn it into paint, turn it into pipes, turn it into products, and then eventually we did a really terrible thing, which is turned it into a gas additive. That's why it
mhm.
all says unleaded gas wherever you go, because the gas used to have lead. And they actually only took it out because it was clogging up the catalytic converters. You can't have a catalytic converter and get lead gas in it. It
Yeah,
just
yeah. It
wouldn't
wasn't
come
the
out.
health thing. It was
No.
industry convenient.
Totally. It was the catalytic conversion, not the health. And it's really a shame because that poisoned everybody. Every single person lived anywhere near a city in the 60s, 70s was getting severe childhood lead poisoning.
Well, anywhere. Like something I like to mention to people is, like we try to eat organic and we like to encourage that for people because obviously the less pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides, suicides that are on your food, the better. But like if you're even an organic crop, like a grain crop, the tractor's going around. And even as a mechanic, like I laugh sometimes because people will mention like, oh, the exhaust and stuff like that. It's like it's not just that because engines will wear and tear. There's molybdenum, there's chromium, there's all types of metals in there that'll wear down and could potentially go through the exhaust too, let alone plastics and you know recycled oil that goes and blows by it's in the exhaust and they go so that ends up on a crop like your food. So even if you're good old country boy and you're out in the boonies and you think like, oh, I'm not in the big city, I'm not getting it. Well, the tractor could just be spitting it all over your food, let alone if the tractor's got an oil leak or something else.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And when it comes to lead, it bioaccumulates. So just like how you have a tuna fish, it's been eating all the other little organisms that get eaten by slightly bigger organisms, and then the tuna eats 1,000 of those organisms. All that mercury winds up in the tuna. If you have organically grown crops and the organic, what would you call it? like fertilizer, like
Yeah.
the whatever you put down for organic crops. It's not chemicals, but
Yeah.
that's going to have absorbed lead in it, and then you're going to put that onto the field. So you're actually fortifying the soil with more lead because the soil all over the planet now has lead on it because of this burned gasoline and
Well,
the
it's the
smell.
same thing as like the cow eats the grass, bioaccumulates in the cow makes manure, the horse or whatever, like quadruped, they use the manure and stuff from, or yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So it's hard to get away from. It's a multifaceted thing. And that soil contamination from the gasoline is a huge aspect to all this. But the other two things that
When did it end? I think it was the year before I was born, at 1986.
It was going down a lot in the 80s, and then I think they finally banned it outright in 96, but at that point there was very little lead in the gas. But
Okay.
the lead industry loves to sell forms of lead that don't get recycled, as you could imagine. Like if you just need to mine more of it because you burned it up in the gasoline, or you painted it on a wall in a house, or you um those are really the best ones. If you make pigments or
Mhm. Well,
the
makeup,
gasoline.
so like there's I think it's a nonprofit called the Environmental Working Group,
Hmm.
and they do like the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, it's called, and they test the most pesticide, herbicide sprayed fruits and vegetables and crops, and then they say, hey, these are the cleanest, uh, the cleanest 15, and these are the Dirty Dozen, these are the dirty, like most sprayed, and they test it every year, so it gets updated. But then they have a body care database, so
Nice.
they test like every product you could get on the shelf, basically, from like your Pert Plus Pantene herbal essences to like the best organic products. And then they're testing makeup, and like they've lead and all types of stuff, and lipsticks and makeup, and still like common.
It is, and even winds up in turmeric and spices, all those
Yeah.
things. They actually get lead added to them in the form of lead chromate, which also has hexavalent chromium in it, which is also
Oh, great.
bad.
Yeah.
And that's a yellow form of lead, and so it's heavier than turmeric. It makes it flow better. It looks better. It's not you can't taste it, and it's that's how all those. There was a bunch of children who were poisoned with
Yeah.
this
That was the
applesauce.
sauce. Oh,
Yeah, it was
wow.
called Wanna Banana, and it didn't have turmeric in it, but it had cinnamon in it, which was the cinnamon was adulterated, and then they used that cinnamon to make
Oh,
these applesauce packets, and just drinking one of them would have given somebody lead poisoning.
oh,
Many of these children drank a
because
lot.
hexavalent chromium was also the what got what's that Hollywood movie?
Aaron Brockovich story.
And Brockovich, yeah, that's what got her started. It's funny enough because I worked for Subaru for a time, and my boss would always say, "Oh, Subaru," he knew I was like Mr. Organic, right? So he's like, "Oh, they're like the most hippie eco car companies. Like they got deer roaming their plant property, and they're super duper. But like on the when the new vehicle would come in, it would say hexavalent chromium free." And I
Huh.
worked at many car dealerships. Like I won't name them all, but it's the only one I've ever seen say hexavalent chromium free on their seats.
Wow.
Yeah, so we can only imagine. I could go for days just on the toxicity of cars, and but
Yeah, it's incredible. Um, and the food isn't even the biggest source for most people. It's either so the two first things I mentioned, the paint and the pipes, those are it's good because it's good and bad. I mean, you can know if you're going to be exposed to lead paint or pipes based on the year of your house. So they
mm,
banned the really high lead paint in 1978 for use in residential homes, and then they banned um, lead in gas. Sorry, lead in the pipes in 1988. So if you have a house built before 1978, you might have lead-based paint. If you have a house built before 1988, you might have a lead pipe coming from the street to your house, and that's where the lead
mm,
will get into your water. And so if you
mm,
drink water that has even a little lead, you're going to get significant amounts of it just from drinking because you drink a lot of water, so it's like
mm,
um, just a tiny bit of contamination is going to do you in with the
mm.
exposure on the water. So yeah, that's those are two of the big aspects of it is the
I
water.
guess some of the easier ones that are more, I guess, openly discussed, is the pipes and the paint. Throughout the last couple of decades, that people will recognize that is a source of toxicity.
Yeah, I mean, because that's like, you have there's laws about renovations. There's laws about,
Like
you can't,
asbestos and yeah, yeah.
because that's where you get into trouble when you start renovating. You sand something and has
Mhm.
lead-based paint, and you have dust everywhere, and it's really insane. That limit was not even the limit when they initially when the Consumer Product Safety Commission identified like lead-based paint. They named it lead-based paint, and they set the limit at 600 ppm, 600 parts per million. That's 0.06% lead. And then that definition stuck for about almost 15 or so years. They banned lead-based paint, and they capped it at 600 in 1978. And then in 1988, the government reclassified it to 1 milligram for every square centimeter because they were using X-ray guns to scan the walls, and the X-ray gun would shoot X-rays onto that square centimeter surface. The
Oh,
X-rays would pass through the paint, hit the lead atoms, and then cause them to glow. And the glowing light that came off of it was also X-ray light, but it was a different color of X-ray light, and the detector could sense it. So they could know, okay, there's above or below 1 milligram in the window. And the gun's, an X-ray gun. That sounds pretty advanced, but in 1988, like it was like a phone from 1988, which probably also ran off of X-rays if you ever looked at one. But like the technology was terrible. And I think that's why they chose that 5,000 part per million, that 1 milligram per square centimeter, because that's what you could reasonably detect. And a lot of those guns would have a inconclusive range. And so if it was like 1.1 milligrams, it would say inconclusive, and then the operator would have to scrape
mhm.
off some of the paint and then send that to a lab, and that's where they would use that parts per million. They would weigh the whole scrape, then they would break it down in acid, then they would run it through another machine called an atomic absorption spectrometer, and then they would determine how much lead was in that, and then they would, figure it out that way. But I think I'm not going to get into the technical jargon, but there's always some debate over like what are these, what's the best way to measure it? What's this? What's
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, yeah.
And everybody has their own opinion on it. But in my opinion, if you see something glowing, you've got a problem and you should take
Mm.
action. Like if you use chemicals and you're finding lead with your chemicals, there's enough lead there that it definitely shouldn't be getting into your body. You should be taking precautions. You should hire
Yeah,
a
yeah.
professional or whatever.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Like it speaks to your product. That it's like I the metaphor I thought about, like, so when you're testing, like we have machines for testing batteries in automotive or heavy equipment, and depending what you do, you can kind of get the result. Like, oh, I'll test it 3 more times, and maybe I'll get the voltage where I need it, or I'll get the current amperage reading I need to fail this battery.
Mm,
Because like the battery's pooched and you want to replace it, but you got to get the right specs on this printout to get warranty or to whatever. And it's like, well, if you just play around, and it kind of sounds like if we just play around, like, no, look, the lead amount's safe, depending what test we do. And
for sure. Yeah. And check this out. This is even more ridiculous. So if you have, let's say, lead on the wall, do you have a lead hazard? Not sure. That's not proof that you have a lead hazard. You have to have like lead on the floor. You have to have lead dust. So the way they test that is they pick 1 square foot of floor, and then they do a dust wipe, and then they break that down in acid. They send that to the lab. And that dust wipe limit used to be 40 micrograms per square foot, and that's like really high. Now it's 10. And
mm,
the lawsuit is going to bring that down to probably any detectable amount using atomic absorption spectrometry, which is like 5, give or take. So like this is a really low limit that's coming, but like still, like you're just testing 1 square foot in a room. Like who knows like
yeah,
where,
yeah.
if you tested the
Where's
middle of
the
the room.
come in? Yeah. You open the window, but that one corner is where it all collects.
Totally, yeah. And that's
Jesus,
and that
eh?
corner is like by a window that has lead paint that it's rubbing. Lead dust comes from a friction surface from your deck, and then you track that in. The handrail, the door jamb that's getting hit by the door. So any of these friction surfaces, that's the spot
Mhm.
to look. And if you see any of that stuff glowing with the test, you should look on the floor. Another great thing that people can do, they can check their vacuum cleaner dust bin, like what you
Oh
would throw in the
yeah,
garbage. Go
yeah.
outside, throw it on a piece of newspaper, spray that down, see if you have glowing lead dust in there, and now you know, okay, there's some source of lead in the house. I'm going to track that down. I'm going to figure it out. And
I'm gonna be
most
right
like
back and test my vacuum. Okay.
Yeah. And it's
Wow.
so
Yeah.
fast. It's so fast and so easy. And people don't know if they have lead in their environments until their kids get tested typically, or they're never going to
Mhm.
find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just spoke to a woman in New York. Her name is Taisha Jones, and her child was poisoned. They were living in Section 8 funded housing, and NYCHA is like the organization in charge of that in the Bronx. And they are like notorious for trying to not pay. They're like you said with the
Mhm.
batteries, like, let's test it. Let's get our own inspectors in there, make
Yeah.
sure that this is really over the limit. Otherwise, you're not getting anything. And so her daughter had a really high blood level, and NYCHA was like jerking her around for years. They offered her 5 grand eventually. She said no. They offered her 350. She said, screw you. And then she sued them for like $57 million she settled for because they were really jerking her around and they were
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
like trying not to protect her daughter who was getting severely lead poisoned, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
total nonsense.
Well,
And
yeah.
so she actually wound up getting a law passed called the Dakota's Law, and that makes every child who goes to a pediatrician get tested for lead every time, which I think is awesome because you don't normally get tested. But I
Mm.
think that this product that I've been making, this Fluorospec, has the power to even go beyond that because why even wait for a kid to be a lead test? Kids
Yeah.
shouldn't be
Yeah.
lead tests. They should be just not getting exposed. So use a test kit where if you find out you have lead, you have no problems right now. Oh my God,
Mhm.
there's lead in the wall? Great. It's like finding out you have poison ivy with your eyes instead of just blindly rubbing your hands through your garden and be like, oh, do I have lead poison ivy? Let me find out if I get hives.
Yeah. 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 Like I seen the video you posted with the garden hoses, and I was like, oh shit. Like I bought a filter to go on our tap for the city water. So plant like doing our gardens, if we fill up our kiddie pool, and I was like, oh snap, like our hoses in the backyards in the sun, like sometimes a dog drinks it, the baby's in it. It's like, oh, like yeah, I should be testing that too. And then like we use air hoses for work for air compressors. So I'm like, oh, like are you getting aerosolized lead every time you spray that out or use tools? And like, yeah, one thing I thought about when you were mentioning the like something like the Section 8 housing, and like the government kind of not wanting to have to do all the remediation.
Mhm.
To me, like I think of it because so we're in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. We're the nickel capital of Canada. We're like this giant mining nickel town. They
Hmm.
mine nickel here.
Wow.
We're home to the. It's shut down now, but it was the second largest smokestack in the world, next to Kazakhstan. So there's a giant like cigar looking thing in the middle of our city, like a big smelter,
Wow.
and it ran for years and like poisoned the environment all over here, and
Hmm.
a lot of history and stuff in our town, but a lot of industry and something like that came to my mind is like, oh, like the remediation part to me, usually the government can get behind that because they can kind of get new industry, new jobs going. So it's almost advantageous if you're like, okay, like now's the time. Yeah, like now it's a good time. Economy's down. We'll do the change the law and do the lead thing now for the remediating the housing, and it'll make a big boom. All these contractors, companies are gonna have to make safety equipment, blah blah blah. Like it's a big economic boom. But like I work in a lot of industrial areas, and because we're a mining town, like I'm in might be a factory, a warehouse. We have so many like little one-off places that are doing like interesting things for mining all over the world. They might be building equipment, building, uh, selling specialty drills or equipment. And I've been to places where these giant like 5,000 pound lead batteries for forklifts and stuff are just like sitting outside on the ground, rain and shine, just getting poured on because it probably costs a fortune to send it to wherever it's got to go, like Texas or something. So they're like, hey, let's leave it in the back 40. We're just we're a big warehouse or a big factory, whatever. And it's some things are restrictive and safety oriented, but then in reality, it's like the appear, everyone, let's be safe underground and this and that. And, wear your hard hat and stuff like that. But then the environmental or exposure things, it's like, no, not today. And like
Yeah.
you're saying, like pipes and so much, like these companies aren't going to tell you like, oh yeah, by the way, in this giant like factory plant place we have, like that's lead, that's this chemical, that's this chemical, this that you're going to be grinding on that. You probably have to cut that. Like you're not going to know the exposure to all the crap that's going on there. And like, yeah, just like I said, we were talking before we started recording. I've had to like take a rod of lead and smelt it down to rebuild a battery post for a cell on a forklift. And our company had guys doing that, no mask on, like no gloves on, just like heating it up with a torch till it drips down. And like, yeah, I don't know what are the worst exposure things. Like you said, dust. And the exhaust, is it like atomizing it? And
Yeah. With the exhaust, when you burn lead, it turns into lead oxide, which is really, really small particles, and that is just going to go everywhere. Lead dust is again really small particles when you're working with, paint, turning paint into dust. But if you're heating up lead, some of it evaporates. Like the lower the melting point of something is, the easier it is to evaporate. And so lead is like, it melts at about 650 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's relatively easy to evaporate metal compared to something like, a steel, iron, like
yeah.
that's a much higher. It's like double or triple as high.
Mhm.
So it's pretty easy to get that into the air. If you're working with it, heated up, if you're doing repairing stained glass windows, if you're making stained glass windows, if you're doing soldering, if
Mhm.
you're a plumber, pouring lead joints or fusing waste pipes together, that used to be a popular thing. And then it's getting it on your hands too. So if you handle that lead, some of it gets on your hands. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos where I touch something and I spray my hands. And say, look, this got onto my hand. So when it gets onto your hands,
Mhm.
you eat a sandwich, people smoke a cigarette, drink, bite their nails, do something like
Yeah, yeah.
that. They ingest the lead, and ingestion is really how you get into trouble. So you can ingest stuff, orally, or you can inhale it. They're both going to get absorbed at a really high rate, especially if the particles are small. So if you ate like a, whole lead BB, that would be bad. But if
Mm.
you chop the BB up into a million little pieces,
It's
that's
much
gonna be
worse.
much worse. Yeah. And if
Yeah,
you're eating lead chemicals, that's even worse because those are already soluble.
I've heard the analogy for like mercury is that you could lay in a pool of mercury and you'll literally float on top, or you could drop mercury into your hand as a liquid and it'll just float around and you won't get any exposure whatsoever because of just the way it stays in this little containment.
Mhm.
And so you won't have any residue on your hand, but then break it down, put it into something, put it in the air, and then yeah. So it sounds kind of similar. Like you might not die just touching the lead rod once, but then you start smelting it down, melting it, or you know you put it down and nicks onto something, a little piece comes off, whatever.
Yeah, and it's really cumulative. So it doesn't get out of our systems easily. It builds up in our bones. 95% of all lifetime lead exposure winds up in the bones. And that
Mm,
becomes kind of like a time bomb for if anybody's listening. If you're, were exposed in the 60s, 70s, now you're like turning 60, your bones are going to start to get a little bit thinner, and then that lead is going to start to come into your blood a little bit more, and it could
mm,
increase your blood level enough that it causes a problem. And the thing is, the difference between what is proven to increase risk of heart attacks for adults and what is like the level of concern if you have a job where you're being concerned and you get tested, they're not going to give you any time off. Nobody's going to say anything. There's no laws protecting you unless you're at 40 micrograms per deciliter, and that's really high. The like level of concern for adults is 2.5 micrograms per deciliter, significantly increases the risk
mm.
of dying from a heart-related injury versus not having that level of exposure. So it's like you're going to have acute lead poisoning symptoms at 40. Your stomach is going to be hurting. You might have anemia. You're going to be feeling lousy. Your appetite's going to be terrible. You're going to have mood changes. The lead is going to be making its way into your brain. And like I talked about the calcium, like how it mirrors calcium. And so it's not just the calcium that goes in your arteries. Calcium's used in the nervous system. It's does basically like this, and outside of a neuron has a bunch of switches on it, and if the switches are all on, that neuron's going to fire like a hair trigger. Any little signal comes to it, it's going to repeat that signal and send it down the line. And these are called calcium gated ion channels.
Yeah.
So when lead comes along, it comes along and it flips on all those switches because it binds and it sticks there.
Mhm.
Doesn't do like what calcium does. So you wind up with hyperactivity. That's what causes the high blood pressure. But when it's in the brain, you get hyperactivity inside the brain. And so that's like ADHD symptoms, the inattentiveness, the hyperactivity. And then if you have like extended periods of hyperactivity in the brain, some of those neurons could actually die. And since
Yeah, yeah.
children are A, so small, and B, don't have much of a blood-brain barrier, the lead gets in there easier and it takes less to
Mhm.
elevate their levels higher. And they're learning a lot. So, their brains are hyperactive.
Yeah, yeah.
Something dies, it's much worse. But adults at 40 will start to get actual like cognitive symptoms
That's interesting too,
versus,
because
yeah.
the I don't know how familiar you are with EMFs, electromagnetic fields.
Hmm.
The crowd of people who are really pioneering the health and safety stuff with EMFs, it actually affects the calcium gated ion channels. So I wonder how much of that is not just the EMS, but like that with the lead, because people, like everything is studied in a like a micro, like a little microsphere area, and they're oh, look at the effect of this on here. But now compound that with the person might be not only getting it from the EMS, having these neuron fires, but now they got lead in there too. And it's like, oh, like I can't be near my Wi-Fi router, or I can't have my cell phone on me because I want to vomit. It was like, okay, well, now once again, it's one of those things where like, well, was it the lead that you had from your job for 40 years, or was it the pipes in your home? And oh, we know you grew up in Section 8 housing, and like, well, you can't blame us for that, you know?
Yeah, the blame game with lead is not, no one's getting blamed. That company that made all that lead gas folded, all the money got distributed to the people who owned it. It was
Yeah,
jointly owned by like GM, Standard Oil, and another big conglomerate
yeah, yeah.
dirtbag company that they just washed their hands of it. And there's no liability there. The
Mhm.
paint, Sherman-Williams, they own Dutch Boy Paint, National Lead Corporation. All these companies, you know, got absorbed and
Yeah.
resold, and there's nobody to sue now. So none of those, they almost got sued in Rhode Island. They've like decided that they were going to, Sherman-Williams was going to have to pay like $400 million or something. Ninth Circuit District Court like repealed this decision, and then for some reason, bizarrely, Rhode Island decided not to try it again. They just gave up. And they
Mm,
probably could have won, but they just gave up. I don't know why. But
so
nobody's
interesting.
there's no money for people typically who get lead poisoning, and that adds to the difficulty with it.
Sadly, it's like a story as old as time. So our city wasn't a very old city. They didn't have a settlement here or anything like that, but they came here, found minerals. Um, the story goes they're mining, they're doing forestry. Chicago fire happens. They cut down a lot of forestry up here to send for the rebuild after the Chicago fires, and then during that same time, they're open air smelting, which open
Mm.
air smelting looks like literally like Jenga blocks of wood stacked together, throw the ore on it, burn it to make super hot fires, separate your metals, and then acid rain came, washed the soil away. So like growing up, my grandfather used to say like there's places that you take you in the city and you say like you just see forever. Like one of the claims of fame to Sudbury is they practiced the moon landings here, like the test runs for the moon landing because it looked like another planet because it was
Wow.
just soil stripped, stained rocks. So there's all types of like same thing, like just but one company dissolves, they change names, change owners. Now it's a Brazilian company after 100 years. So this Canadian company Inco is now changed. It's sold to here. So it's like you'll never catch the culprit for any damages in the environment or to people. It's just like shell companies, and then move over here, and then everything seems like a BlackRock, Vanguard shell company anyway, because they're all just giant investment houses that can just own everything by stock. So it's kind of like there's like a meta level of it too, where it's just financiers and and money who can just play the game of like, ah, we'll let Pepsi get sued, and we own 90% of Pepsi, and we own 90% of Coke, and then we'll take the shares and we'll move it here. And yeah, it's unfortunate for the everyday person who's the victim, more or less, for this stuff.
Of course. I mean, none of those people are feeling the consequences of lead contaminated housing, like whatever, medical care that doesn't include like heavy metal screening or like some detox protocol, or even be cognizant of like how much of it is in your diet and stuff like that. And it really, yeah, it was really unfortunate. And so typically like industry causes the problems. And so like my whole thing is like my industrial activities could remediate them. If I'm able to effectively advertise and market this test product to people, way more people are going to find out that they have lead, and then they're going to take some action with it. And there's a lot of places, localities normally have laws that say, if you are living in substandard housing, the landlord has to fix it right away. And so
Mm,
the question becomes like, how do you know it's substandard? Like, you're going to hire a lead inspector. They're going to do a technical lead inspection. If they find lead-based paint, they're going to talk about it. If they don't, they're not. And then if you want to find out, is it dangerous, you're going to have to hire a hazard inspector. And that's another $300. The lead inspection's around $300 in my area. And like I have my licenses for these things from the EPA. And like it's insane, like the hazard inspector will read the inspection report. He'll say, okay, yeah, well, like this is a friction surface, this isn't a friction surface. There's this one crazy tidbit where if you have lead-based paint on a windowsill, it's not a hazard unless there are teeth marks on the windowsill. So it's not a hazard until somebody has been actively chewing on it, which is so insane. It's like saying the loaded gun in my backseat of my car isn't a hazard unless the kid has their finger on the trigger.
well, teeth marks on the barrel.
Teeth marks on the barrel. Exactly. Like clearly it's not, it's like, yeah, it's a loaded thing. Like it could poison someone at any time. It could go off, but it isn't going off right now. So like don't worry about it. It's not a hazard. So you can't like say that's a hazard. So, it's insane. So that's what I'm hoping to accomplish is like somebody gets in the door for $50, they spray their whole house, they find that they have lead dust, and then they call somebody and say, hey, I got a lead hazard right here. Come
Mhm.
investigate this. This is a slam dunk. Like I'm gonna get my whole place renovated. I'm gonna get my housing paid for to live somewhere else in the interim. And then those people can be safe from lead. They don't have to wait until their child is screened. Like that's like it may
Yeah,
seem like the best move. Like, okay, yeah, of course, like you should screen every child as much as you frequently can.
yeah, yeah.
Being poisoned for longer is worse, but never being poisoned at all is 1,000 times better and costs way less too. But it's just that this technology is super duper new. And when I found out about it, just like that 3M patent, I got the same vibes from the guys who were trying to patent and control it. I'm like, these guys are insane. They've known about this for 2 years and they haven't done anything with it,
Mm,
but try to advance their own interests. And that's like typical, like I mean, like, people find out about something, they really are into it, and like they're not from the United States, from the Netherlands, but
mm.
that's just luckily it's not happening in this case. So we can just benefit from generic pricing all
Mhm.
out of the gate, and I think that's a great thing because people are going to get super benefit from this. I've so
Yeah,
far
it's
like
not expensive. Like, all things considered, I was like, oh shit, like that's pretty affordable. You
yeah.
know?
It is, yeah. I think it's great, and I can still make money on it. Like I had to buy this whole warehouse. It contains a methylamine salt, which in the United States is controlled by the DEA. So I had to get a DEA license. I had to get this security, all this stuff. Like it was a whole hassle to get into making this. Far more than the swabs. The swabs I was making on my parents' living room at first. It was easy, and I didn't need any licenses. But this is a little bit different. But it's way better, more powerful technology because you can see dust, you can see, the glowing on any of the dishes and all that stuff. So,
Mm.
it's pretty crazy. I mean, I would have never done this. I didn't even want to do this. Like I don't like using social media, but it just was like, man, it's just people are gonna flip for this. Like it's so exciting. Like lead detection used to suck. Used to be expensive professional with an X-ray gun telling you a number, or use a swab that's overpriced, or you just okay, the swab's turning red. Like great,
Yeah.
I don't know
Or
what.
like it for someone like who was a health nut that wanted to care for my body, the thing was like, okay, battery, literally had to go off of like the mainstream. What has lead in it? A battery has lead, maybe some ceramic dishes. That's it, and you'll never know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to know like what's the when I found you, I just started going back, watch every video. Like, okay, what's he finding lead in? What's he finding lead? So like, what's some of the craziest or just all the different weird things you found with lead in it? And then I'd love to know, get into the detox part if what you might know about
Sure.
that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've gone to a lot of thrift stores. I've gone to a lot of regular stores. Ceramics, a lot of times of ceramics. One of the crazier things was baby bottles. That all those glass baby bottles on Amazon, the paint on them for some reason has lead, and a lot of them have a lot of lead. And that just blows my mind. Um, let's see. There's you know
The garden hose one was a big one for me recently.
Yeah, but I wasn't that surprised by that because that kind of hard rubber, that PVC rubber often has lead in it. So I wasn't super surprised from the garden hoses, but I was like, damn, there are a lot of garden hoses. It was like almost half the garden hoses that I tested had
Yeah, yeah.
significant amounts of lead in it. And I haven't done leach testing on those yet, but I would assume at least some of it gets into the water. But I'm also not sure how dangerous that is if you're watering plants with it, even if you're watering your garden, because the
Well,
soil does a lot.
what about like our kiddie pool we have for our like 9 month old?
Yeah, well, I mean, like it depends. I think it depends a lot on how long the water's in the pipe. The same goes for your house. So if you're, just ran the tub for 20 minutes and then you take a slip out of the sink, much less dangerous than like going to sleep for 8 hours, waking up, turning the water on, and then
Mm-hmm.
taking some of that first draw of water and then drinking
Constant.
that because it's been sitting there for 8 hours. So the same thing is true with your hose. If you run the
Mhm.
hose, you get all that hot hose water out, and it's been in the hose for 30 seconds, how much lead is getting in there after 30 seconds? If it's been there for 30 minutes, if it's been there for 30 hours, huge difference in the
Mhm.
concentration because it's a function of time and then the hardness of the water. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so
Calcium, you could draw it out of the. Mhm.
exactly, yeah. The harder the water, the better. That's like the basic. And that's like if you're familiar with Flint, Michigan, like the people
Yeah.
were all getting exposed to lead, they didn't change the pipes, they changed the water source and it was a lot softer. And so they changed it to the Flint River and they were just not treating it properly and it was just eating away at all those pipes. And the craziest thing about that whole thing, which is totally lost in the topic about it, Flint, Michigan's water was half the federal limit for drinking water. It was half of the limit, and the limit's
Yeah.
15 parts per billion. But that means you're going to get double an adult drinking 1 liter of water a day will get double their daily maximum recommended amount of lead from that. And that's
Interesting.
like 6 times what you would want a child to eat a day.
So, in my like early 20s, I got onto the fighting the fluoride in the water supply,
Mhm.
and love it or hate it, whatever you want. The quick arguments are it's put in there for your teeth, therefore it's a medication, therefore you can't medicate the water with a blanket medication because you don't know, is Eric getting 50 milligrams in his glass and I'm getting 3? Well, I have one kidney. What about a baby? What about an old person? What if someone has fluorosis of their bones? So I went and talked to one of our city councilors, and I found out later one of the tricks they do is they're like, oh, we'll come to your house and we'll test your water. Because the first thing they want to do is they want to test your water, check the pipes, so they can fail your house, make you get all new pipes for your house instead of saying like, oh, let's address the fluoride in the water and your arguments about the safety, the health risks. No, they want to test your house so they can say, yeah, just like we thought,
Mhm.
because all these old houses are gonna be like, oh, we found too much of this. You got to replace all the pipes in your house. Don't ask us again about this topic.
Yeah. And that's
Funny.
expensive. And that's what all these environmental contaminants are all about. It's all about money. Like it costs a lot of money to fix it. There's no money for this, and it's not like it doesn't like straight up kill people to the point that you would even know. Like if
Yeah,
people
yeah,
like those 400,000 Americans that die every year from lead, their death certificates don't talk about lead.
yeah,
Nobody's testing corpse bone lead amounts or blood lead amounts in these people. They had heart attacks, they had heart disease, they had coronary artery disease. Like that's the cause of death. But like these meta-analyses controlled for all these confounding factors and found that there's significantly more risk of dying if you have elevated levels of lead in your blood. And that like, I mean, it's totally mind-boggling because, you know, even like personality suffers all these things like subclinical amounts of lead will lead to like personality issues that might
Mhm.
not wind you up in prison, but like you might be a little bit more grouchy, or you might be more likely to get road rage or something.
A
And it's complete.
divorce, or like think of all the problems in our modern society.
I know. Think of all the problems in our modern society and like how much of that has to do with that. And think of all, all those heart attacks in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And now
Mhm.
we have all these statin drugs, and everyone's like, oh, you got to freak out about your
It's
diet and all this stuff.
cholesterol. It's fatty foods. Yeah.
Yes. Was it lead? Everybody
You,
had lead
not
poisoning.
us.
Yeah. Everybody over the age of right now, like 55, had lead poisoning, serious lead poisoning. They have serious amounts of lead in their blood,
Mm,
far more than anybody else who's like our age or younger, because there just wasn't that much lead in the air. Like every day you walked around a
yeah,
car, you were getting exposed to hundreds of times the amount of lead that like we would get exposed to in a year. It's
yeah.
incredible.
There's a doctor, Dr. Ed Group. He does a lot of like alternative natural health stuff, and the way he put it, I really enjoyed. He called it um, vectors of disease. So it's not it might not be the lead, and it might not be, the pills you're on, or it might not be, the wiring in your house and the EMFs or the hardness of your water, but all the vectors together compounding, like you said, you only need to do a meta-analysis, but then if you do that meta-analysis on every single insult to our health, then it's like, oh yeah, okay, now the 1 in 2 cancer, 1 in 13 autism, all like, okay, now all the stats make sense because it's all these confounding variables, and eventually one of these things is going to find your Achilles heel, and then yank on it. And obviously lead was a huge one. Like there's a reason we kind of stopped it, and it got the media attention for a moment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and so I'm sure people are really wondering how they can get this out of their system. How they can protect themselves. Like you're
Save
saying.
us.
And like the number one priority is of course avoid eating more of it. Find
Mhm.
that dust, find that lead pipe, find those lead dishes, find whatever the heck, your gun hobby, the diving hobby, the stained glass hobby, like whatever those are that are exposing you, stop the exposure because you can't get free of it if you're consistently building it up.
Mhm.
Next move is avoid, root vegetables that are refined, cassava root especially, like things like dark chocolate have a lot of lead, the
Mhm.
turmeric has a lot of lead.
Yeah.
And then the only thing to do is either get like professional chelation drugs, which are terrible because they also chelate, and chelate just means binds to metal, remove it from your body. But like calcium's metal,
Yeah.
all these things are important, and you wind up losing that with these chelation drugs. The
It's
thing
rough
that
on the
I've been
body too.
on, what'd you say?
It's rough on the body. I know a few naturopaths that have done it for people, and I have a few friends that have gone through it. It ain't easy.
No, no, it's not. And so I've been really into lately reading about this topic because like I want to have something to offer everybody. And the thing that I've settled on is like the best thing is something called citrus pectin, and more specifically modified citrus pectin, which is modified with heat and acid to demethylate and deacetylate. And those are just like it's an esterification of the pectin. So basically you have like the pectin molecule, and then it gets another thing attached to it, and it becomes this bigger molecule. And
Mm.
the important thing is to remove those through like cooking it down, basically. Remove those, get it down to about, they use this terminology called Dalton,
Oh,
under 15,000 Daltons. Normally they're above 50,000 Daltons, but lower it down, and then that will actually get into your blood. Some of
mm.
it, this pectin will get into your blood, and then it binds to lead. And the studies I've been reading on it are insane. 500% increase in urine lead after like 4 days of taking this
Wow.
pectin. Yeah, so like you're really just like peeing out the lead that you have in your blood. It's just getting scrubbed from your blood.
Yeah.
I know that the FDA won't let me say like, oh, it's like it's a chelation therapy,
Of course
but
not.
like it is basically like doing that. Like it seems like it like doesn't have lead in it. Like how is the lead
Really?
getting into your urine?
Are you familiar with Mike Adams, the health ranger? He
No.
ran news.com.
Okay.
So he was like big health advocate for years, and then got into doing like college chemistry courses, and then bought a mass spectrometer. He bought like some college university was like upgrading all their equipment. And so he spent like $1 million, like, yeah, give me all your equipment, and built his own lab. And then he started, it was like a little controversial when it happened, but he started just testing everything. Like, I'm testing all the protein powders, I'm testing all the organic companies. And then like, oh, like this protein powder's got lead, it's got this cadmium. Like, so he started like putting the all these brands kind of on notice. And like some brands got kind of like huge market crashes because it's like he was multi-million viewer type, like he was a staple in the alternative health
he's like a
community.
tastemaker. He's like an influencer kind of.
Yeah, like before it was a thing, and then it was like, hey, like I tested all the protein powders, all the plant protein powders. Like, here's the 5 worst, here's the best ones, and then just kept going. And then one of the things, one of the things he found was, I think it was something similar, like pectin or something in strawberries would bind with mercury to pull it out of the body. It's interesting that some of those plant compounds have that ability to kind of claw onto something and drag it out of your body.
It is.
Anything with like charcoal or C60, I don't know, like that's
I mean, those are great for if you have it in your gut.
yeah.
You know, like if you've just been poisoned with something, like it'll absorb it and it'll bind to the stuff in your gut and you'll excrete it. But like the thing with lead is like it's in your blood,
But,
and if
yeah.
you've been exposed, it's in your bones, and the bones act as like a reservoir. So
Yeah.
if your blood level goes down, the bones will release more. So like
Mm,
it's insane. So I don't know exactly how, like, because it really depends. Like lead exposure depends heavily on how much you've been exposed to a lifetime. So like people who are younger and haven't been exposed chronically for 10 years, like, or let's say you're born in 1975, you know, you were exposed heavily for 10 years. You know, now if you want to lower your blood level, it's just going to rise back up because you have so much in your bones. But like me,
mm,
if I got exposed for, let's say, a month, I did a renovation in my house and I wound up with a lot of lead dust. And if I crash my blood level, that's great. It's not going to come back because my bones have so much room in them for more lead that it's not
mm,
going to diffuse into my blood as fast. So if you've been exposed for longer, you probably would want to do a longer course of something like
mm.
modified citrus pectin. You know, taking 15 grams of it a day is sufficient to get these results. And it's kind of expensive, but I'm not sure if that's because the volume on it is always lower. I mean, because it seems like a pretty straightforward thing to batch process in this
Yeah.
way and just take the raw material, which is mad cheap, and then can transform it into this like activated form. But I'm going to find out if like I can get good prices on it. If not, I'll probably just invest in cooking it and then spray drying it so I could give people like a really cheap like alternative.
Yeah.
Because it's all about cost, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's got to be efficient and then marketable and profitable. Yeah, so interesting. I'd love to kind of pick some of my doctor and natural health people's minds, because like I'm trying to think of some of the big detoxification items. Like some people say like chlorella, which is a micro blue green algae. Um, there's the charcoal is a big one. C60. I don't know, with a molecular size, maybe that's something that can go get past the gut. Or what's the other big one? Some people are like yay or nay on it. Not
Zeolite, maybe?
zeolite, yeah, and
I'm
that
not.
comes with its a whole suite of controversy too.
Yeah, I know. And I've never seen, the thing is there's not like data on these things.
Mm,
The modified citrus pectin, like there are just multiple studies that show that it really just increases the urine lead. And I can't wait because I bought an atomic absorption spectrometer myself. Um, and I'm going to find out. I'm going to do all the food because there's for some reason there's no rules on food. There's
uh,
rules. There's like in California, they have the California Proposition 65 warning, but
yeah.
that only applies to processed food. It doesn't apply to whole foods. And like my suspicion is that many foods would require that. Like a potato, probably going to need a Prop 65 warning if they extended it to whole foods. But then like the entire society is going to be like, what the heck is going on? Every food has a Proposition 65 warning.
Well, then people become numb. Then
I know, and
people,
people are already over the Prop 65 because like, oh,
yeah,
it causes cancer in California. Like, yeah, it
yeah.
causes cancer everywhere, but like California is the only state with like any kind of restricted law on this. Everybody else just doesn't have to label it.
Well, I liked it because being in the trades, when that passed, you see all the parts coming in. You're like, oh yeah, you motherfuckers, like Oh, that box wasn't like that the last 5 years. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, that part's got it, that part's got it, that part's got it.
I know. Yeah, it's really insane. And a lot of supplements, like Athletic Greens even
Yeah.
has a Proposition 65 warning in California, but not in New York. So like people wouldn't know about it. So I'm really excited to test all the food. And maybe by the time this comes out, right now I'm building a website, another one. It's like I'm using Wikimedia, which is the same software as Wikipedia. So it
Okay.
allows you to build your own Wikipedia, just custom. So it's all my
Yeah.
stuff. And so I've just been scanning dishes, putting them on there. Once I
Oh,
start scanning all
yeah.
the food, so you can click in, so you say, all right, what's that Target? These are all the brands that are at Target. All right, click on this brand. Okay, all that stuff has lead. This color has lead. That color has
Oh
lead.
yeah, definitely send that to me because I've got some folks in the health industry. Like I said, that environmental working group. They call it the like cosmetic database or Skin Deep. It's called. That's the
Okay,
or
cool.
Skin Deep. So it's like yeah, thousands of body care products and like yeah, like something like that. Like I got some friends with like millions of followers and they've been in the industry for decades that they'd love to get that out to people. They're like, hey, this is the products to stay away from and like limit your exposure. Don't not this, not that.
I love it, and I wasn't trying to do this. There's already kind of a database kind of like this. It's called TamaraRubin.com, and Tamara Rubin's Let's Safe Mama, and her children were poisoned, and she took it really hard, and so she is very difficult to work with because it's trauma based what she's doing,
Mhm.
and she
Yeah, yeah.
actually owes me like over $100,000, and like I'm probably gonna have to take her to court to recover this because she blocked me on Instagram months ago when I started
No.
talking about those baby bottles, because the baby bottle video got like 5 million views, and I'm like, yeah, like go to her website. Like she scanned a lot of these baby bottles, but like look at these. These have lead. And then I speculated, I don't know if these are really that dangerous, but do you really want to find out? Like there's a lead on them, but I don't know how much of it comes off because I haven't tested with the leach test and the atomic absorption spectrometer yet. And she
But
took
once
that
again,
so
yeah,
offensively.
it's
And that's
exposure. Like the less the better.
the less the better, yeah, especially around kids. Like, don't take a chance. Like, you say, oh, the baby bottle's fine because there's only lead on the outside on the paint and the kid's barely going to touch it. I have no idea. You really want to play games with your kid and with lead? Hell no. So, but it's tough when people are, really freaked out and it changes their lives a lot. So I just wound up making my own version. It's called everythingled.org. And it's just going to have all that information on there. Um, yeah, it's gonna be sick. Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm really excited. I already have like 300 or 400 entries, but no food yet, and that food is really a big
Mhm.
part of it. Because if you have an elevated blood level and you want to reduce it, like imagine you are, walking forward. If you take one step forward and then take two steps forward and one step back, you're moving at half speed. So the same is true with food. If you every day you excrete 6 micrograms of lead, but then you consume 5, you're only losing 1 a day. And then if you have 50, uh, you know, um, 50 deciliters of blood, that's, it's going to take a long time to get down to lower
Yeah,
that. And if you have some coming from your bones or something. So if you have a kid and they're eating, right up to the limit and you're trying to get it lowered, it's going to take a while to get lowered because it's just
mhm.
going to their bones and diffusing into their bones to hide out at that point,
Yeah, yeah.
and
It's a
also their
repository.
brain. Yeah, so rushing it involves avoiding the hell out of every source, whether it's dust, whether it's your diet. And I think all these things together are going to give people the confidence they need to get over it, because it's something that's really a stumbling block for a lot of people. But if you have, confidence and information and the tools you need, it's like easy to clean up and get over. And that's what I hope I can bring to people because it's just a sucky topic and like it's caused so much misery
Yeah,
in the
that's
world.
amazing. The
Yeah.
impromptu hero. That's the true hero's journey. You weren't looking for it, and then you found it. Like if it found you.
Yeah, but I love helping people, because if I'm not helping people, I'm like helping myself. And like at this
Yeah.
point in evolution, we got too much already. Like I'm gonna help myself to like 2 Slurpees, and that's not gonna do me any good because like I'm addicted, like it's easy to overdo anything in the modern day because we're not struggling. We got too much of everything. And I don't think evolution was really set up for happiness. It was set up for survival. And if you have a surviving species, no, nobody cares how happy they are. As long as they're breeding and producing more, the species is going to proliferate. And
Hmm.
like with humans, like we got that down pat. Like we're not going away. Like we can reproduce, it's easy for us. But like what's hard for us, I think, is like balancing out our lives and like enjoying the time and being caring and conscientious and not just like blowing up the planet and
Yeah,
contaminating the hell out of everything and fighting, corporate raiding. Where did that come from? Lead.
yeah,
Prime
yeah. We
90s, lead.
something we talk about a lot in our podcast is seven generation thinking, and then how do you put that into effect? Because it's like cool, you burn the ground, you kill the soil, or you poison the whole planet with lead. It's like cool, you got to party and go on a yacht, and you got to retire at 40, and now you're rich, and now all the generations after have to suffer. But how can we implement it so 7 generations from now it's even better?
Mm.
Oh,
It's easier said than done, and it's not even easy to talk about because it still is, it requires people to really give up the easy path to like
mm,
quote success, and success in the modern era is measured in dollars typically, unfortunately, because like that's the only thing you can really measure, like, or like that's, I mean, I don't know, you can measure it other ways, but like when you get a lot of money, you get a lot of influence and power, and you make a lot of things happen. And I think that that's
mm,
an important element to the lead prevention game, is like the people who have the ability to make moves typically make them in an antithetical way against lead poisoning prevention. They're causing the poisoning. They're trying to avoid paying to fix the properties that they own. But like I'm hoping I can like make a splash. And like, this spectrometer was 50 grand. I got two $35,000 X-ray guns. Like it freaking is mad expensive, this technology. But like whatever, it's so worth it to me because what am I going to spend the money on? Like
yeah,
another jet ski or some crap like that. Like that's so like it's fun. Yeah, okay, yeah, it's fun, but like I don't need more fun. I need more like future help. Like, every kid who doesn't get lead poisoning, they're gonna have 5 extra IQ points. Every single time they have a conversation with somebody for the rest of their life, they're gonna benefit from that. They're gonna
yeah.
have more empathy, more ability to cognate about the topics. It's gonna be a better experience for them and way better for their parents, knowing that their kid didn't get lead poisoning. Feels a lot better. And it's just
It's
a
gonna
better
be
vibe.
the Eric effect.
Yeah, I hope so. That would be awesome. And because
One,
it's like it's not just that you get. So here's the other last thing I'm going to talk. I love talking about lead, as you probably can recognize. But like when everybody has lead poisoning, does anybody have lead poisoning in the classroom? Let's say, like if you're being graded on a curve, if you're
yeah, yeah,
first or last, nobody cares if you have lead poisoning if everybody has it. But if I'm the only kid in class who has lead poisoning, I'm going to be way worse off. And the other
mm,
thing about modern lead poisoning is the parents find out about it. So if my parents know I had lead poisoning, they're going to treat me totally different than if I didn't. And that's going to be kind of like another layer to this like excessive stress that comes along with, my parents knowing that I have lead poisoning. Oh, I'm misbehaving. Oh, it's the lead. Eric had lead poisoning. Now I know I
yeah,
had lead poisoning. Like
yeah.
nobody in the 60s knew they had lead poisoning. And that's like kind of the best thing and the worst thing because you got somebody who's
Uh,
really got a strong opinion about something. And it's like, okay, well, you can't think harder about that. Like you've drawn this conclusion and you're positive, like what gives? Like you're really sure. You're really sure. But at the same time, they're not like, oh my gosh, yeah, I have lead poisoning, which is not a good thing. It's not a good feeling, and my
yeah,
heart goes out to anybody who has that experience because like I know what it's like. I'm like, oh, I was addicted to heroin and right out of high school. Like that was not a good experience. Like it didn't make me feel good or feel confident that I
mhm.
could make safe choices for myself going forward. You know, crazy.
Yeah, that's life.
It is, yeah, yeah. It's a crazy time, and it's the sucky thing is you need bad stuff to happen to even be able to recognize that. Because it's
Hmm.
very easy to be like, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, figure it out. Don't have trauma, don't have problems
Yeah, yeah.
when you've never had any. And it's like easy to say, oh, just get over it. I did. Why can't you? But like everybody's experience, it takes getting down to the level and seeing like I recognize this as not like a bad person, but instead like a sufferer.
Hmm.
So like that enables me to like reach my arm out instead of being like, oh, this person's bad. This is a bad
Yeah,
thing. Like I feel bad for everybody. Like, even the people who do terrible things, like they are not doing that because they're feeling good or they're having a good time. Like,
yeah, yeah.
they
So,
might need to go to jail because they're so dangerous. They're not loving life. Like that's not why they did that.
yeah, for sure. So I'll make two things before we close out. Was when you get to the food, I know one thing that the Mike Adams ran into was you might find lead, but then is it bound and I guess like bio-friendly,
Hmm.
so where it's like naturally occurring lead, completely safe, but it's detectable, but it's like bound biologically to where it never absorbs. I know that, he'd get a little excited about things, but it's like, hey, we know about this food or this supplement, it just flushes out. Like there's no issue with the chemical X and
Interesting
condition.
idea for
Yeah.
sure.
So, if you do find something, you're like, pump the brakes. Guess what, Instagram? Like
Yeah, we can
everyone
relax, but
stop eating this healthy food.
there's a way to do that. And I've actually, that guy from Colombia, the soil test that we developed is based on bioavailable lead in soil, because a
Mm,
lot of times the soil will have lead that's not bioavailable. And so you don't get 100% of the lead that's in soil. So when you do complete acid digestion with hydrochloric acid mixed with nitric acid, or maybe hydrofluoric acid and hydrogen peroxide under high temperatures, and it really just dissolves everything, then you get the total amount of lead. But when you do hydrochloric acid at pH 2 for an hour with glycine, you get a simulation of what it's like in your stomach. And you only
yeah.
get lead absorbed in the stomach. Once it goes to the small intestine, it gets basified and it doesn't absorb anymore.
Mm,
So that's how they did that study on the soil. And so that's a really interesting point, would be to do total lead versus bioavailable lead in all these food types and just run them simultaneously, because it wouldn't be much more difficult to do them both, because like the full digestion, I have this microwave digestion apparatus, you put it in a Teflon bomb and you heat it up and it's all this drama. But the other way, it's relatively easy. It's lower temperature, it's at room pressure, and then we could find out, yeah, is it bioavailable, which is what really matters. Like if you have total lead, if I eat a gram of lead and none of it goes into my body, I didn't eat any lead.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the other thing I thought of when you're talking, um, with lead having an affinity to deposit in the bones. So on a similar vein of like the lead toxicity thing, so mercury has an affinity for kidney tissue, and um, so I had a kidney removed, I had cancer, and one of the uh, things about my mom was she had like 20 mercury amalgam fillings put in, you know, probably before I was born. And
Mm.
then, the stuff on the mercury amalgam fillings, I don't know if you're aware of, like they've done vaporization tests that, if you drink a hot coffee, you're literally vaporizing out mercury out of
Wow.
your mouth if you have those fillings. So it's just funny. Like I think about that. It's like, oh yeah, like, each one's going to have its little spot. It just happens that lead is in your bones, where, like I'm never going to be able to sue a mercury amalgam company or a dentist or anything like that, because, same thing is going to happen. Oh, was it from the coal-fired power plant in Indiana? But yeah. So yeah, just give your website and where people can reach you, where they get your products, where they can follow you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so it's Eric Everything Led on Instagram. Everythingled.org is that information repository, and detectlead.com is the place to get the tests or tests. And I'll have a bunch of other things on there like wipes, maybe some PPE, and hopefully that supplement if I'm able to figure out exactly how to get that going.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about that. All right,
Yeah.
everyone, follow them. Like, I was super pumped for this because I'm like just a nerd when it comes to like health and chemical exposure and industry stuff like that, and a little conspiracy gravy to go with it. So
Of
yeah,
course.
follow
That's
him
what you
and
get with lead.
get his products. I like it. It's super easy, and yeah, we're trying to limit our exposure too.
Facts. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Anytime, man. Love to do it again.
Same.